Hi, this is Axel, Rudi, Pell, and you're listening to Thunder Underground. Rock on!
Welcome to episode 450 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always. And there you go. Another milestone type number, 450. Crazy to think that started this nearly 11 years ago. And here we are, 450 episodes deep. And when you have, these kind of landmark number episodes, it's always cool if you can have on a guest of great significance. And I believe that's what we've got this week. Axel Rudi Pell, phenomenal, legendary German guitarist, is here on the podcast to talk about his brand new studio album, Ghost Town, that comes out next week. We're going to talk about this album, about some of his earlier stuff, about some of his thoughts on different things throughout the history of his time with music, and a lot more. But first, I'm going to let you know who sponsors this podcast. DEB Concerts is a concert promoter based out of the Tulsa area, has brought tons of great acts to downtown Tulsa, such as Megadeth, Lamb of God, Saxon, Great White, Last in Line, LA Guns, Buck Cherry, Steelheart, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube. The list is great and long, and they book the Roadhouse DEB concert stage at Rocklahoma every year as well. This year is no exception. The Rocklahoma lineup, the full lineup you can see at rocklahoma.com, but the part that DEB Concerts booked includes, like I said, the DEB concert stage and the pre-party, which will feature bands like Plush, She Hates Me Not, Molly Hatchet, Slaughter. Hey, Mark Slaughter's been on this podcast a couple times in the past. Also, the mighty Ugly Kid Joe. First time at Rocklahoma. I'm super excited. One of my all-time favorites. Also a couple tribute bands with Jump for Van Halen and Ozzolution for Ozzy. 7 Foot Monkey is also on that stage, along with a bunch of other great bands. So check out the full lineup on rocklahoma.com, debconcerts.com to be kept up to date with info. And of course, we do that for you right here as well. Sunset Tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Tattoos are done good and proper. State licensed. Well over 30 years of experience from Jake and his crew over there. Native American owned, and a female artist on staff full time. If you've got an idea that you don't know how to bring together, hit them up. Schedule a time to get in there to talk about it. They can help it bring it together. They've got the skills, they've got the experience. You can see it all on their socials. Sunset Tattoo Tulsa on Facebook and Instagram. All the photos, tons of photos throughout the years that show that they specialize in different styles. I personally have tattoos done twice there at Sunset Tattoo by Jake, and I'm looking to have more done very soon. I know that you'll be happy just like I am. Lots of touring musicians have got work done by Jake as well. He's very entrenched in the world of heavy metal, so give Jake Sunset Tattoo a call. Tell him you heard about him right here on Thunder Underground. All right, well, we've had some really good episodes here in the last few weeks, if you've missed out. Just recently, this past week, Mark Kindle of Great White was back on the podcast. This was his third time, but the time previous was almost 9 years ago. So it was really cool to have him back. And of course, if you've missed that news, Great White was featured on American Idol a few weeks ago because their current singer, Brett Carlisle, was auditioning for American Idol, and he brought Mark Kindle and Michael Larday along, and they performed a stripped-down version with piano and acoustic guitar of House of Broken Love. We talked tons about that, and he talked about that experience, so it'll be cool to see, how Brett advances throughout that show, and regardless, it's huge exposure, for a band like Great White in the year of 2026 to be getting national exposure like that's pretty cool. We kind of mentioned on that episode, you kind of see a little bit of shift in things. It's not like 80s or 90s rock is going to come back fully into the mainstream, but it's cool to see stuff getting its shine again. Megadeth, set on top of the Billboard charts at number 1 for the first time in their career this past month with their newest album, which is fantastic. Just a few weeks ago, my old co-host and I, Jason, recorded an episode that was fully talking about the new Megadeth album and breaking it down track by track. Figured it was worthy of its own episode since it is the final Megadeth studio album, according to Dave Mustaine, and it's quite a good one. If you have not heard it yet, definitely to check that out. Also recently had on John Corabi. This was his second time on. The last time was about 5 years ago, right after the pandemic was kind of coming to an end, at least in the live music world. John joined me on the podcast and came back recently because he's got a new solo album coming out next month in April that's really fantastic. It's got a real 60s to 70s kind of Rod Stewart at times, Rolling Stones at times, Beatles at times kind of vibe. So you're getting more of kind of Corabi's influence as opposed to the heavier hard rock that he's known for with like Motley Crue and The Scream and Union and Dead Daisies and all the great stuff he's done throughout the years. Corabi's one of my favorite vocalists, so I was super excited to be able to have him on once again. We talked for quite a bit. That's a guy that's easy to talk to. He's always got a lot of great stuff to say, and it's always interesting, definitely to my ears for sure. Robin McCauley was also on recently, a couple weeks ago. This was his 5th time, I believe, on the podcast, and he is one of the easiest guys to talk to as well, just because he's one of the nicest guys in rock and roll. Anyone that's ever met him or spoke to him could probably attest to that. And you always see great things, and the guy kind of exudes that, positivity and optimism. And he's released more music in the past 6 years probably than he had in the previous 30, which is great to see. Of course, he's most known for that Macaulay Schenker era of the MSG group from the mid-'80s into the early 90s. Him and Michael Schenker put out a lot of great music. He also was in Survivor for a bit. He's got a brand new band. Well, I say brand new, but new in the grand scheme of his history and our history listening to music. New band called Black Swan. They've been around since 2020. They just released their 3rd album a couple weeks ago. You definitely need to check this out. I believe if you're a fan of Axel, Rudi, Pell, you will absolutely love Black Swan. That band also features Reb Beach on guitar, who's a phenom, Matt Starr on drums, and the incomparable Jeff Pilson on bass, and he produces the albums. And this is a fully kind of co-written by these guys kind of band. This isn't one of those one dude's writing it and he's bringing in his buddies, basically as studio musicians in a way. No, this is a real band. Even without them performing live, it's still, I consider this a real band, unlike some of these kind of studio projects you get in that kind of realm in the past decade or so. Yeah, who else has been on? Philip Schaus was on a little over a week ago as well. He has a brand new solo album himself. He is one of the guitarists in the band Accept. Speaking of German guitarists, well, I say speaking of German guitarists, Philip Schaus is not a German guitarist, but he is a guitarist in a German band. Irrelevance to the whole situation, right? But hey, just trying to find relevance where we can. But Philip Schaus was also the guitarist in Gene Simmons' solo band, bass player in Ace Frehley's solo band. Done lots of great stuff throughout his career, and his new solo EP is very cool as well. We talk a ton about that, and he's currently on tour in Sweden. Also had a Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down tribute in there a few weeks ago that included the vocalist of Dime Store Riot, the former bass player of Wither, and Robin McCauley himself on there, speaking about their thoughts on the loss of Brad Arnold from Three Doors Down. Besides that, I also put out a reaction video you can check out on YouTube to the announcement of Sebastian Bach replacing Dee Snider in The Mighty Twisted Sister. Pretty interesting thought, but it makes perfect sense in my opinion. If you're going to look for a replacement for Dee Snider, Sebastian Bach still has the vocal power live. He's got a similar stage presence, moves, kind of conducts himself on stage as a frontman the same way that Dee Snider did, wishing, Dee a happy retirement. And it's cool to see a guy like that just kind of step away when he knows that he can't put on the level of performance that he's known for. But yeah, besides that, let's get into the current subject at hand, which is Axel Rudi Pell. Ghost Town comes out March 20th. That would be next Friday. This is his 24th studio album. couple of those were covers albums. His entire career is probably around 40 albums because he's got a lot of compilations and several live albums. Like I said, 2 or 3 covers albums in there as well. The guy is kind of a consistent in one of those things that even though there's tons of music, it's not like he's putting it out there just to put it out there. He's a phenomenal songwriter, composer, more than just a guitarist, well beyond just a guitarist. And for the past nearly 30 years, we're going on 28 years now, most of his albums have included Johnny Gioeli as the vocalist. And going way back, still to this day, Johnny is the vocalist of the band Hardline. But back in the early 90s, man, I was a huge fan when Hot Cherie hit the radio here. It got played all the time, and I just thought that was one of the coolest things I ever heard. That Hardline album, Double Eclipse. Just one of those great kind of underrated albums of the era that over time I think a lot of people don't know about, especially people that got into melodic rock later on, like a younger generation. If you're hearing this and you're a fan of Axel, Rudi, Pell, and you're not familiar with Hardline, they're still putting out great music, but go back and check out, Double Eclipse. Such a great, phenomenal singer, and he really accents what Axel, Rudi, Pell does in guitar and his compositions that he puts together. Previous to Johnny was Jeff Scott Soto for a few albums in the early to mid 90s. So Axel's always had phenomenal vocalists along with him. And that's what you want as a fan of music, right? You want a phenomenal guitarist, a phenomenal vocalist. Hell, you want a phenomenal rhythm section. You want phenomenal music, and that's what Axel, Rudi, Pell has continually provided, and Ghost Town is absolutely no exception. So let's jump into this and hear what Axel has to say about the brand new album and a lot of other stuff. Here's Axel, Rudi, Pell. You got Ghost Town coming out next month.
Yeah.
We've already got the title track, and Sanity's been out a little bit. Are you happy with the response you've heard from everybody so far?
Absolutely. There was no one negative reply. I think the people love it. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, always good. Do you ever get nerves or anything putting out new music like that, waiting for a response, or is it just kind of like after all these years, it's just natural to put it
natural.
out?
I'm not, I'm not a starter. This is not my first record, so I'm not as nervous as I used to be, like 35 years ago or 40 years ago. So it's a natural progress. Of course, I'm looking at some comments, on YouTube or whatever it appears, and sometime on Facebook or social media, and I look at it, and people say what they say. I read what they say, but okay.
Yeah. Well, you've got Guillotine Walk coming out here next week as the 3rd single before the release. Talk a little bit about what people can expect from this track.
Excuse me, I'm smoking too much. Oh, Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost. Okay, so that people can expect, this is the first track after the intro of the record. It's a fast one. There's a strong, very powerful guitar riff at the beginning, but I left out all the guitar works in the verses because it gives more space. The title can breathe more, Yeah. So it's like the keyboards and melancholic keyboard, drums, bass, and of course all these great vocals. So that's enough. And guitar on that would disturb the whole song. I thought. I left it out. Comes back in the pre-chorus. Of course, the guitar. I love that track. I really love it. I think it's one of the strongest. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it as well. And I like that. That thought process as well, coming from a guy that's known as a guitarist mainly. You're known as a composer and a songwriter, but as a guitarist, as thinking about, I'm going to take the guitar out of this to let the rest of the song.
Yes, because I'm not only the songwriter and guitar player, like you said, I'm only my own producer, and the producer would say, no guitar in there, I said, okay, I'm thinking about the producer is right, yeah.
Right. Well, one of the highlights here is also Breaking Seals. You've got this collaboration with Udo Dirkschneider
Yeah.
Was this something you've wanted to do for a while with Udo, or is this something that just
No,
kind
no,
of
no.
came into your mind with this track specifically?
Yeah,
Or
it came to my mind with this track, but when as soon as I finished writing the track, I always had in mind, wow, that's a cool track for Udo. And maybe I ask him and ask the other guys in the band, what do you think? And I said, yeah, it's a good idea. And I get in touch with Udo. And he said, yeah, I will do it if I like the song, but I have to hear it first. I said, okay. I sent him the song and he said, yeah, great, I love it. And he did it very quick, very fast, very easy. Yes.
yeah. When you send him a track like that, did it have like full Johnny vocals and
Yes,
then just him
full Johnny's
telling him he
vocal.
would rotate him? Or?
Yes, I sent in all the lyrics and marked which was Johnny's line to sing, which is Udo's line, whatever. Yeah, and he followed it absolutely, and I love it. Yeah,
I really loved how Johnny's got a dark sounding voice, but it's very clean. And so Udo's voice, really contrasted that, which really set it off
yeah,
in the song.
yes, right. Udo's high screams, and it's typical Udo. First you can hear one, you can sing one note, and you all immediately know, that's Udo. Yeah,
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
absolutely. Another thing, about your albums is that the album cover art is always very fitting, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
this album's no exception. Do you have a hand in the direction of the art, or do you have an artist that just handles that completely?
And the artist who's creating all the covers since the last one you're talking at the moment too. So it's me, myself, and I.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm creating all the covers since 2024 by myself, doing it, of course, with AI. I can't paint or whatever. But, I always had some guys who did it for me in the past. But, when the KI thing, the AI, sorry, AI, it's
Yeah.
KI, it's German, AI is, yeah. When it came to my attention, I said, well, maybe I can try it out. And it took me several weeks to find the right prompts, what you have to put in there to get a result which you're happy with. So it took me several weeks, and but the programs are so good at the moment. I think they will be even better in a couple of years. But it's so amazing, and I can work on it. I said, okay, I need to change this and that. That is to my 100 satisfaction, whatever, 100%. But when you have a human being creating it for you, an artist, you have to tell, he has a specific picture in his head, and I have probably a different picture. So when you get the first sketch, you say, I know, I don't like that. I don't like, can you change it? Yeah, of course. And we change it again, and it goes back and forth, and takes forever, and a lot of money will be wasted for that, I said, I can do it by myself, very easy. So I can.
Yeah. When you have a title like Ghost Town, is that like in your mind ahead of time that this is going to be like the title track of this album, or is that something that happens once you have all 10 or 11 songs composed?
It happened actually when I did the artwork. I saw this. I looked at the cover. I said, "Well, this looked like a ghost town." I don't have the title Ghost Town in my mind before.
Oh,
I looked
okay.
at the cover with the castle and the ghost standing there. I said, and the skulls on the floor. I said, "Ghost Town. It's perfect." And that was a point where I started thinking about, that's a good album title. Cool. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's cool to hear because I would think it would be the other way around, like the album, or the album art was inspired by that word, Ghost Town.
No. Yeah.
Well, when it comes to writing lyrics, do you wait until do you have a song written first before you come up with, like a theme and lyrics, or are you always writing?
What I'm doing normally is regularly I'm writing first. I'm doing the music, all the rhythm guitar things, and the speed, set up the beat, the tempo, and then it always happens that the song title comes to my mind first before I actually write any word for it, for the verses or whatever. I have the song title in my head. I don't know. The magic has to be right in the air, straight in my head. I don't know. Ghost Town was okay, and then I'd say Guillotine Walk. I don't know how I came across this title. I don't have a clue. I can't remember, but it was there. Then I write the lyrics around that theme. It was very easy then.
So it's always and that's always after music has been fully written as well?
Yes, that's the first one, yeah. And then I sing a nonsense text into my demo, which I'm doing at home. I'm like, whoa. Just nonsense words, which doesn't make any sense.
Oh, okay.
Even not English, not German, like, something like that. And then I'm sitting there, I have the title in my mind, and then I write the lyrics to it, but the syllabus has to be perfectly matched to the blah blah I did before. That's a little strange sometimes. Takes a lot of time, but it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, since you're writing lyrics for someone else to sing, do you ever like think in your mind like these words would work better with Johnny's voice than these, or am I overthinking that?
You're talking about the lyrics, the content, or what? No, what do you
Yeah,
mean?
like when you're writing the words, like the
Yeah,
lyrics, do you ever keep Johnny's voice in mind, thinking how this will sound, or is that just me overthinking?
yeah. I've always had Johnny's voice in my mind when I'm writing lyrics. Always, all the time. I said, "Oh, this is bad," and even not Johnny's lyrics, but any lyrics. That maybe this is bad to sing. Sometimes it's a little strange or whatever. Sometimes is a tongue breaker or what, and then I change the words, of course. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you kind of like you adapt with him, like once he's singing the words back to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, when I send in the lyrics, he looks over it, something, it's a grammatical, something error in there, we have to change that, and no problem. But on this record, he didn't change anything, so everything was great. First time. First time.
Wow. First time for everything, right?
Yeah.
Going way back, what was it? Like I've always been a fan of Johnny's voice. I loved Hardline. Like going way back, what was it that first attracted you and thought this was the guy that I want singing my music?
It happened when actually the first Hardline record came out in '92. I was blown away by his voice. I mean, some songs I really loved. Sometimes I said, this is a little strange, but anyway, I loved his voice from the beginning. And when Jeff Scott Soto had to leave my band in '97, Johnny came to my mind. He was the first guy. I said, "Wow, this guy is so cool," but it was very tough to get hold of him. I didn't have his email address. I didn't know where he lived or whatever. So, but somebody gave me his email address, and it was the right address. And I wrote him an email, and he said, "No, you're too late. You're 6 weeks too late. 6 weeks ago, I cut my hair, and I stopped singing, and I'm only doing business with my brother in an e-commerce company." Whatever. I say, "Are you kidding me? You with a voice from hell, voice of God, but you can't quit." No, I won't do it anymore. And it took me 6 months, and I wrote an email every fucking day. Believe it or not. We never talked on the phone, but 6 months. And then he finally said, "Okay, I'll come." Maybe he was sick of getting another email the next day. And he said, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll do the record." I say, "Okay, great." And he was in the train. He came over with the plane, with the train, and I picked him up and say, "Hey, where's your hair?" I say, whatever. But the first note, he went into the studio straight before we even went to the hotel. I said, "I want to try one first. I want to listen." Okay. So we went into the studio and he sang one line. I said, "Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost." That's great. I love his voice. It was the right decision. Yeah.
And how long had he been not singing at that point? Was it a few years?
He was not singing. Only a couple of months, I think.
A few months. Okay.
Yeah, a few
Yep.
months. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just always loved how his voice is like, crystal clear and clean, but it sounds very dark and evil at the same time, which is
Right.
not common in melodic
Yes,
rock.
right. That's right. Yeah. I love his voice too. The problem is he knows that he's a good singer.
You're right. Going back, like you just said, 92, going back even further, you've been with Steamhammer now for almost 40 years. So it has to be like, you obviously have to have been happy to remain that long. Like, what is it about that has kept that partnership going for you?
No, it's very easy to explain. I can rely on them. I trust them. They trust me. I can do what I want. So normally, when you're at a record company said, "Okay, before you go into the studio and we record the next album, we want to hear some songs before. Please do demos." I wouldn't do that. I said, "Fuck you, believe me or not." So I don't have to do any demos. I can do what I want. The first time the record company actually hear the record is when the complete album is mixed and mastered. And I supply it to them, and they said, "Oh, that's cool. I love it." And on the other hand, they trust me and I trust them. I know what they can do. I know what they can't do. But anyway, who cares? No, it's a good relationship all over the years with different kind of people in there. But I love them all. Yeah.
Did it take a while to get to that point, or were they early on very hands off, like even in your early days?
In the early days, for the first record, I had to do a demo because when I was in Steeler and I quit Steeler, every single person had a record contract with the exclusive contract with the record company. So for me, it was my first choice to supply them with a demo first before I had the chance to look for any other company. So I supplied them with a demo, and the CEO of that company at that time, he gave me a call the next day. I received the demo. "I hear this on the TV, fucking the band, and it's awesome. And we do a record." And okay, fair enough.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, like you mentioned, there's a lot of people there, and like 40,
Yeah.
nearly 40 years, there's had to have been a lot of turnover. So how do you maintain that
Yeah.
working relationship?
You know, I know a guy who's now working with SPV for almost, I think, over 20 years or 25 years. I don't know. He's a fantastic guy. His name is Ollie. He's a CEO of Steamhammer and whatever. Not the CEO. What is it? The head of everything.
Yeah.
Let's say he's not the CEO, but the head of everything. He's a great guy, and I really liked him from the beginning. I worked with him before SPV. He was in a promo company. He did some promo tours with me, and he was a great guy. And when he joined my record company, he said, "Yeah, that's it. That's a good decision. That's great." And he's still there, and we're having fun. Yeah.
Speaking on, making this new album and like talking about the old days, like there's a drastic difference in recording technologies since you started.
Yeah.
Do you like how much, more adaptable and easy recording has gotten in that sense, or do you miss the old school days of like, putting in the work with tape and that kind of thing?
I always, nowadays, since the digital technology is there, it's so much faster in the studio to work. It's so quicker. I remember that when you had the big tapes and stuff when you're playing, for example, you play a song. Stop, and mistake. Okay, you don't have to play everything, but the last 5 seconds, please. Okay, I will drop you in. I said, okay, and you play. Oh, sorry, I erased something before. Can you start? We have to go 10 seconds back. It once happened. I remember that when we recorded the Steeler record, there was a great solo apart from the last 3 notes, which were really crap. I said, okay, drop me in and with an analog tape. And it happened, really. I'm not kidding. The engineer made it so good that I had to replace everything apart from the first note because he fucking erased more and more and more. And nowadays, with the digital technology, it's impossible to do that mistake, because everything is kept forever or whatever. It's so quicker in the studio. Some people are complaining about the sound. The analog sound is warmer and it is more, I don't know, it has more feeling. I said, fuck you. I don't hear any difference, Nah, whatever. Enough talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my ears aren't in tune enough to hear a difference outside of maybe, a record. You hear it in the, when you're spinning vinyl, but outside of that, it's like the technology these days is so great. I think that it's.
That's right. Yeah, you could even simulate analog recording with the digital thing, so it's no problem at all, I think.
Well, so you got these European shows coming up in April. Do you have more plans throughout the rest of the year to tour again in Europe, or what are your plans throughout the year?
So we're starting the tour one day after the record release on the 21st of March. We're starting with the European tour, the first leg, which runs through April. I think there's nothing for us in the summer, as far as I know, because we are concentrating on the festivals on 2027. So we're on the second leg of the tour, starting in September, run through October. Probably then we're doing a few Christmas shows. I don't know, or maybe the record company say, "Oh, it's time for another album. We do some in between album." I don't know. I don't have any clue. Wait and see.
Does that happen every once in a while where they're like, we want a new album and it kind of pushes you quicker than you're expecting? Or?
Yeah, because, sometimes, the regular studio record, they come out every 2 years, and I can't make another studio record in that period in between. So for every other year, it's too much, But then the record company said, we have to do something special because the last record sold really good and a lot of streams and a lot of physical things. It was great. Well, let me think about doing another ballad album or doing another cover album or whatever. They don't like live albums. I don't know why, but they hate it. So I don't know. Maybe I'm up the end of the year after the second leg of the tour that I'm doing something more. I don't know. Wait and see.
Very cool. Man, well, I'm absolutely loving Ghost Town, and I appreciate you coming on here and taking the time with me today.
Thank you. My pleasure. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
There you go, Axel Rudi Pell. A huge thank you to Tim from Adam Splitter PR for his continued support of this podcast throughout the years. And of course, a massive thank you to Mr. Axel Rudi Pell there for taking some time out there to hit me up on Zoom to talk about Ghost Town and some other stuff throughout his career. Very cool to have on Axel Rudi Pell for the first time. 449 episodes previous to this, friends. So we've been doing this a while, and it's always great to have on new people to talk to, new musicians to help, kind of spread the word around. Because although Axel Rudi Pell is a name that I believe a lot of people know in the world of rock music and hard rock music and even metal, I think a lot of people aren't familiar with the full breadth of what this guy can do how prolific he is in his songwriting and composing and everything that he's done throughout the years. You know, like we talked about earlier, around 40 albums, 23 or so of those of just complete new studio material, along with a few covers albums, live albums, compilation albums. The guy's prolific, and it's hashtag all killer, no filler. Johnny Gioeli is a top-of-the-line vocalist who's always been underrated in my eyes as well. So these guys are a group you really need to check out. If you're in Europe, they're playing the big festivals in the summer a lot of times, so you've got the chances to check them out. So hit them up, check them out. Axel, Rudi, Pell, check out Ghost Town on March 20th. All right, if this is your first time listening, like I mentioned, there's all the episodes that have happened recently. But if you're listening right now, wherever you're listening right now, if you hit like, follow, subscribe, whether it be Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcast, whatever they call themselves now, SoundCloud, just hit follow, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, because coming up here very soon, the next episodes will be with members of 10 Ton Mojo. I had on the vocalist Dave Anthony recently. We recorded a Zoom interview, so that should be out very soon. Drew Cagle of Drew Cagle and the Reputation. Fantastic hard rock band out of Illinois that we're going to talk to as well very soon. Also had on Holly and Fred from Dead Groove. Holly is also the bassist in a nationally touring Led Zeppelin cover band, and Fred is the drummer for both Kings of Thrash with David Elfson and Power Flow with the guys from Biohazard and Cypress Hill. Two phenomenal acts right there as well. Also recently recorded one with Joe Defiant, the guitarist of Defiant. And I'm about to record another one with a couple other big names, but I won't let you know that until it officially happens. But 449 episodes previous to this you can check out. Whatever kind of hard rock or metal or rock you're into, it's probably been covered at some point. Members of Accept, Dark Tranquility, Creator, Hanoi Rocks, Avatar, Seven Dust, Motley Crue, Megadeth, Testament, Guns N' Roses, Def Leppard, Living Colour, Whitesnake, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Tesla, Great White, Warrant, Grand Funk Railroad, Three Doors Down, Kiss. Gene Simmons has been on here in the past, as has Bruce Kulick. Deep Purple. Glenn Hughes has been on here multiple times. That's one of the highlights of my life. Jeff Tate, the original voice of Queensryche. Dee Snider, who we spoke about earlier, has been on here in the past. Several members of Tesla. Well, two members of Tesla several times. Frank Cannon and Brian Wheat. Members of Corrosion and Conformity, Typo Negative, Prong, Helmet, White Zombie, Billy Idol. The list, my friends, is giant, and the list is long. TheThunderUnderground.com. You can listen to episodes right there. You can also follow us on socials. If you follow us on socials like YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, there's daily content that comes out that's separate from these podcast episodes. A lot of reels and shorts. There are some included. You know, you'll see clips of, like this interview, for instance, Axel, Rudi, Pell. You'll see clips of this on the socials. But you also see reels about historical milestones, news that is happening, and all kinds of great stuff. So give a follow on all those socials so you don't miss that stuff. And anytime you see a post of this podcast or any of those reels, if you just like it, comment on it, or share it, any of those three things are always a great help, because it helps getting these things moving around in the algorithm so more people see it. But again, a massive thank you to you for checking this out, whether it be your first time, your 28th time, or your 450th time. It's much appreciated. I've also got t-shirts, shot glasses, koozies, guitar picks, stickers, magnets, all kinds of great stuff. So hit me up for any of that you want. And let us know what you think about the new Axel, Rudi, Pell album and about Sebastian Bach joining Twisted Sister. All right, once again, a huge thank you to DEB Concerts, Sunset Tattoo, Atom Splitter PR, and of course, Axel, Rudi, Pell. And until next time.
Oh, Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Ghost. Okay.
Thunder Underground, y'all.